How are you, brother?
Good, man. I'm good. I got to figure out how to do that IG messaging. People keep saying it to me. And I've never done an IG video chat, so maybe I'm inexperienced with Instagram
Brother,
there.
you have to deactivate
Oh,
you have deactivated your video chat facility. That's why.
oh,
In the
interesting.
settings, you have to go into video and enable video chat.
There we go. I got to hit that switch. That makes sense now. I'll just have to go do it. I've usually if I do video stuff, it's Zoom or it's I'll do Messenger, but I'll have to figure out this Instagram video
Yeah, it's
chat.
pretty cool. Once you access it, you're gonna love it. So make me the first person you have video chat with.
Do not do I when people start calling me, is that's gonna happen? And people start ringing my Instagram messages, that's gonna happen?
Yeah, that's what's going to happen. So what you want to do is when you've had that chat that you kind of scheduled, then you might want
Mm-hmm.
to deactivate it so you don't have random
Gosh.
people. It doesn't actually sound. Actually, it may sound. I don't know. I don't have any notifications on, so I'm not sure.
Me neither. All right, we'll figure that out. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I can't be getting called on Instagram all day because I get a good chunk of messages on here, and I can't respond to them all. There's just enough time, and it sucks.
Okay, brother. So it's great to have you back again. I really appreciate
Thank
the
you.
time you're giving me. Hopefully, we're going to have a fantastic conversation.
Of
So
course we
tell me,
are.
how did your last interview with me go? Did you enjoy it? What was the
Yeah, good
experience?
time. We just asked a bunch of questions I've never been asked before, which is always good. Makes me think different ways. Makes me have to just process things differently, which is always good. It's always good, man. Expand the brain.
So every time you go forward on your seat, that means that you'll be thinking, right?
I might be. I don't know. So this is like my third. This is my third podcast of the day, and it's only 9 o'clock Pacific.
Brother, this is my fourth one. I'm beating you.
But what time is it where you're at?
It's like 12 o'clock.
Yeah, yeah. By that time, all of this will be third. I might have two more yeah, I'll have two more by that time. One
So,
after you. It's a private one. Yeah, yeah. So I'll be one ahead of you by the time I get to 12 o'clock my time.
okay, you forever in competition, hey, brother?
Somewhat it feels like. No competition, man. Just hanging out.
Okay, so why did you get into coaching? Coaching coaches.
I coach everybody, oddly. I think the thing is that coaching coaches is a clear line, but I got into coaching overall because there was this thing where if I look at my sports career, I was one of the highest level athletes in the world for football. I played in the NFL. And my success always was predicated upon somebody else seeing the field, right? I'm in the game. I could be in the game. I may be a better athlete than the guy on the sideline coaching me, but he sees the field. And so for me, I realized like, oh, people need to have somebody that can see the field. And I love being in the background and giving people the insight because most coaches, the better ones, have played the game before. So when they come in, they give you insights. It's come from a place that's like easy for me to talk about, but I get to see you go out there and do it, sometimes better than me, and kill it. And so for coaching, I started saying, okay, what's the game that I play that I won in life? There's areas that I specifically have great expertise in. So I step into people's lives and say, look, if you want to be able to be on this specific field, whether it's I want a great marriage for somebody, or maybe somebody wants to teach how to be a woman in corporate America, right? Whatever these things that a person's going to come and teach you because they did it, they're coming in and saying, like, I want to teach this person because I know how to do that easy and I get joy from seeing them win. And so for me, I got in because I enjoy showing people how to do the things that I mastered in life. And I'm still mastering, but I'm far enough down the path where I can turn back and say, look, I crossed that finish line. I've run that race a couple of times. Like, I got you. I can show you some things that be able to cut the time short that it takes to get success.
You almost seem to be a systems thinker, that when you
Oh,
do
big.
go into experiences, you kind of separate yourself and work out the process and how to refine and improve the process.
100%. So the way that I work, I do not like to wing anything. I can't, because if I go in trying to wing it, it's like trying to leave your house and say, I'm going to go to my friend's house. I kind of know where they live, but not really. So I'm just going to get in the road, start driving till I find the house. Like, good luck. So for me, like, I need to have a step-by-step process. I need to have a systems, and all my coaching I do is very specifically done that way. I got 14 individual frameworks that are pictures I could send to you right now. Like, this is what we are doing. And so it's the GPS. It's like, hey, we're going to get here. Here's the GPS. Here's the map. Follow this to get there. And that's how we work. And so I think football taught me that. Like, football is all based on plays. It's all based on a system. And it's like you do it over and over until it becomes second nature. And then you get successful at it, right? And so for me, it's the same way I do my coaching. Everything that I think of, I put into a process so I can teach.
So you say that it's football that pulled you into this mindset, into this way of thinking,
Hmm.
but you also pulled out a statistic that says that if you're from a foster home, which
Hmm.
is what you were, the likelihood of you being in the position you are right now is very low.
Very low. Yeah.
So I'm thinking maybe you already had this systems thinking, this process, this way of this aptitude already that allowed you to navigate what was otherwise statistically an improbability.
I don't know. So I kind of look at it like a bronco, like a wild bronco in the fields, right? That thing can run. I could run, right? Based on the things that I navigated, I have a different level of difficulty that I shuts me down. It's very high. Like I can go through a lot and endure a lot before I get shut down. I don't even know what will shut me down at this point, right? But like a bronco in the field. However, systems are kind of like putting, taming the bronco. It's like putting the bit in the mouth, and it's putting the reins on the horse. You can control that energy. And so I think I had the ability to run, but the systems like structuring that, like putting into a process that could run smooth and quick. I think that was more of like kind of putting the bridle on the horse, and that was football. That was taking all this energy and putting into a structure so I could learn how I could actually go faster and farther. It's like a blast. It's another one. If I have like a cannon blast, I have all this gunpowder. A cannon works well because the gunpowder is confining the blast so I can projectile point something somewhere. If not, I could put the gunpowder in the ground and explode in all different directions. So for me, like football taught me to put that cannon, like the gunpowder of me into a cannon and point it where I wanted to go. That I believe is what football taught me with systems.
Talk to me about Bronco. Talk to me about your identity.
Hmm.
Is Bronco your identity?
Oh no, that's just a word I just thought of just now. I don't think Bronco is anything more than just the wildness of our personalities as human beings. Everybody has a little bit of like we'll call it crazy Bronco in them though. Like you want to go hard, but then there's usually a fear behind. Am I gonna get shot in the open area? Am I something's gonna go wrong? So they don't always let that thing out of the gates. But for me now, the identity of me, it's not wild like that. It's
I'm
more of
I'm
like the calm energy.
yeah, I'm always, I'm thinking maybe Bronco is like, your superpower.
It could be.
So, that's what I was trying to understand, whether that Bronco-ness is your superpower. And so is it your identity? You're saying not.
No, I kind of threw that out as a metaphor, but I don't think that that's my identity or my superpower. My superpower, interestingly enough, is connection to other humans. Like I have a weird ability to talk to dang near anybody about anything. I'm a guy that likes to consume the most off the wall news and stuff because I like to have information in my head, and I find that if I talk to somebody for a good like 30, 45 seconds, I'll find something that we can both anchor on that I happen to know just enough about to have a cool conversation. And I learn by realizing that there's every day in our world, I may sit in the doctor's office, I may be in line somewhere, right? There's always other humans around, except for now, but typically other humans around. And I'm in rooms and I'm like, in this room with me right now are 10 people, which means there are 10 things that I don't know about life that they might know that could help my life be better. And so I want to talk to people. I like to have weird conversations and be the odd guy that someone's like, I met this guy in line at the grocery store and he asked me a question and we started talking. We're talking about like life and philosophy. And it's like, but I want to know what you know from experience. And so I have a weird way of sharing just enough about me to open up the gates for someone to share enough about them to where I get this weird nugget. So my superpower, I believe, is like the ability to connect to people in odd ways, not super deep, like crying on my shoulder, but just enough to learn something because the position I'm in as a leader in thought areas, I need to have more thoughts in my head. So it actually aids my career by having other conversations with people's different perspectives and weird worlds to get other thoughts. And that's what I share. It's a collection of tons of brains, tons of experiences put through my filter out to the world to help people.
Okay. So that's interesting. Let's talk about, why you want to have these different perspectives.
Hmm.
You mentioned you want to share. Hang on, you've answered that question. Let's go into the idea of if you were not going to be in the career that you're in now,
Hmm.
the journey that you weren't in now, what
Yeah.
would you have been if you hadn't become an NFL player?
A criminal? I don't know. An NFL player would have been. I don't know. You know what I would have done? when I was in college, I liked and I should have done electronic engineering, but they didn't have. I liked like, car stereos, so I had this weird thought. I was going to come home and open a business called Trucks' Trunks, where I would put stereo systems in subwoofers in people's trunks and then have like all that kind of stuff. That might have been a thing. Outside of that, football, man, I didn't have any other thing. That's a crazy thing. Since 14 years old, this is what I did. I didn't have another perspective of what I could do. I feel like I could have been a spy. I could have been like a weird, like Jason Bourne, like travel around the world, shoot people kind of spy. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking like if you reimagine looking at like your competency and capabilities, what would be the alternatives that you could apply yourself to other than what you're doing
Anything.
right now?
Anything. I mean, anything. But the thing is who I am now. It's weird. It's like the egg or the chicken, right? What comes first? I don't think that I am who I am without certain perspective. So to go back and say who would you be without football wouldn't be I wouldn't be at the level I think I am in something else. I'd be somewhere completely different and possibly a different level because my ability to communicate and talk and share and like my ability to overcome difficulty and fear in the moment. Those are things born of sport that the intangibles I learned there, they're priceless. This is what I apply to the rest of the world. So I don't know if I mean, at the time I grew up in a situation where like, I'd probably be a welder, to be honest. My dad was a welder. That was my family did welding. If I had no job or career, I probably would have went into welding with the rest of my family, to be totally honest.
Okay. So that's interesting. So when we talk about sports, we talk about a prize, we talk about a trophy, we talk about competition and winning. When you are doing sports, it's very clear what the end goal is. You're going to be picking up a trophy, you're going to be picking up a prize, you're going to be picking up a belt.
Yep.
And so for you to visualize, to maneuver, to navigate, to get to your result is clearer, it's a clearer path. The problem is that we don't all have the application of sport as an option. And so if success is based on knowing what the prize is, how do people determine in a non-sport environment what the prize is?
You just determine what it is for you. You set your own scale. I think sports is it's a microcosm of hardships, right? It's a small grouping of a bunch of weird, like, I got to learn how to talk to people I don't like. I have to learn how to take insight and coaching I don't want to hear. I have to learn how to work hard for other people besides myself. So it's things that I'm being forced to do, but it's not the only setting to learn those things. You can learn stuff, about those kind of hardships in any environment, in work environment, in your home environment, in a relationship, dealing with your neighbors, you can learn it, but you get to choose in sport. Think about it. I go into sport and they have already chosen what the end is. I got to get a Super Bowl trophy. I got to be champion lacrosse. I got to, win the World Series. Though the sport's already determined the finish line, the level at which to level yourself.
Clear and the map is there.
Yeah, and we think that's a good thing. And I think it is, but it's a lazy thing because most life isn't lived in sport forever. There's very few people that live it forever. However, we all as human beings have things that we see as being worth our time. Like, this is worth your time. For somebody else, they might say it's not worth their time. But you can't go in and say, oh, well, if it's not worth their time, like, I suck. What we do is we sometimes go into the world and we don't set the scale for what is good, what the finish line is. So we start adopting the finish line of the rest of the world, which is always moving. It's never set, and nothing's ever good enough. So you could spend a lot of time creating and doing and building something and then finish it and say, hey, mom and dad, look at my picture. And they can go, that thing sucks. Because the world does that. Hey, look at this cool business I got. That thing sucks. You're not making 100 million a year. Or, hey, look at this good interview we did. Oh, you don't have 600,000 live viewers. This thing sucks, right? And the thing is we'll get to the point of like, oh, well, man, maybe it doesn't so good. And we tuck away and we get small and we don't re-enter that space and build it. So for me, I'm like, you don't have to have somebody else's scale. I don't have to adopt the sports world. Here's the end result. I have to adopt that person's scale. I go home, my private time, literally get a pen and paper out and say, if I can do in the next 12 months, this, and this is great for me. And I may bring somebody in, and a wife or a friend, like, hey, hon, here's my list. Can I be hired?
The difference is, though, that we don't know what that is.
No, we don't, but we can plan towards something. If you don't plan towards anything, I mean, nobody really knows. I can't guarantee what I do as the king and the pinnacle, but You find that out while going down the path. And if you have no reason to get up out of your chair to go down the path towards something, you never get to the forks in a road that end towards the thing you're supposed to do. So yeah, there's no clear defined line, I promise. But like people are like, how do I find my purpose? Well, you chase your passions. You don't sit down and wait for your purpose to slap you in the face because you're not going to happen. It's going to be walking down the paths of purpose and stumbling, or sorry, the paths of passions and stumbling into the potholes of purpose. Like I didn't, what I do now, this was not something I thought I'd be. I literally thought I'm gonna be a former NFL athlete. I'm an athlete forever. I'm gonna retire, sit and chill. And then it's like, oh no, you're not. Oh, I'm gonna be a gym owner. I'm gonna do this till I retire. I'm gonna run for 20, 40 years, build a big gym. Oh no, you're not. You're gonna be a consultant. I'm gonna consult large companies do this thing. Oh no, you're not. You're gonna be a speaker, right? And so it just keeps on changing. It's like, but I just kept chasing the next passion, and it lands me in these areas of like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Whether it's doing it right now or doing it forever, but right now this is my forever thing. And that's how I keep pushing. I don't compare my life to somebody else's perspective of a scale. I've set my own, and that gives me the end destination I'm fighting for. And I may find along the way a new fork, and I might take a different path, but I'm not going to get to that fork unless I'm chasing this passion.
Okay. Have you heard of Joseph Campbell?
Yeah, the story guy, hero's journey.
Yeah. What do you think of that?
I like the process. Sometimes movies use it almost too perfectly to a T. But yeah, I like the concept of there's a normalcy, then something changes, then things get bad. They get bad to worse. You hit your bottom. You have a transformation. You may lose somebody that's part of your journey. You go through the transformation process. That person might come back to the journey. Then you would get to that same level you were. Like, look, I made it. And then I excel past that. Like, oh, amazing, right? Those are the stories we like. And those are the ones we like. You know, who's the demon? Who's the, we'll call it the what's it, the pretty much the opposition in my story, right? Who is the foe? Like, well, there's all these parts. Donald Miller does a great job with his story brand book of opening it up to make it work for business. But realistically, any good story has those different inflection points. You could probably break out almost any movie that we've ever watched. It has that, right? It has the hero's journey because it endears us as human beings to the character.
What do you think of Joseph Campbell himself?
I never met the man. I don't know much about the guy. I just know about his work.
Okay. I mean, he was a Harvard professor, as I understand it, and then he spent a lot of time reading books. I think there was a war period where he just went into the forest and locked himself up and
Oh yeah,
put all the books in front of him and started reading. Are
yeah.
you much of a reader?
Yeah, man, I got a bunch of these books. I got on my whole bookshelf. I got stacks of books there that I gotta get to. Yeah, I got a lot of. I'm a
No,
book
I
guy,
mean
man.
not get to, but do you actually
Yeah,
like reading?
yeah. Well, I like listening to audiobooks more than I like to read because I sometimes will fall. If I'm not speed reading, I will fall asleep in a book. So like, it's got to be a book I can speed read. If I'm gonna read it, if not, I'm gonna listen to it while I work out.
Okay. So let's talk about something different. You talk about having or gaining different perspectives.
Hmm.
Let's talk about quantum physics.
Okay, I don't know anything about it, but let's go to work.
What do you know about it? Is my first question.
Nothing. I think the most I know about quantum physics is a couple YouTube videos I watched, which had who was it? I think it might have been. Oh, what's that? What's the black guy that does the TV show about Earth? He was on Joe Rogan's podcast. I can't. I can't think of his name. He had the little mini fro, his little mustache, black
Yeah,
guy. He's like a
yeah,
bit
yeah. Something with T.
DeGrasse
Yeah,
something.
Neil
Tyler
deGrasse Tyson.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. So that guy, I learned a few things from a podcast that he was on and talking about some of the quantum stuff. I don't fully grasp it all, so not much, unfortunately.
So, the idea is that everything goes down to the subatomic level, and then there is the quantum field, and that things aren't physical, that there's vibration, and that
Yeah,
events occur as they're observed, and there's a realm of probability, and events occur as they're observed, as opposed to they actually taking place otherwise. So, what do you think of in terms of that theory? How does it impact your life? Do you believe it impacts your life?
I mean, I don't know. As an area that I couldn't give you a full. I guess for me, I don't know if things fully impact my life, and I don't know how they could sometimes. Run that back for me a second, because you're going in a different direction, which is great. I love the direction you're going. You make my brain work. So maybe reframe that.
Okay, so it's about life.
Yeah.
So as we understood life, let's go back, let's paint a big picture first of all.
Start.
In previously, people understood the world to be flat.
Yeah.
And when they understood the world to be flat, they couldn't understand the celestial beings in the sky.
I can see that. Yeah.
The second the mathematicians and the people understood that the world was round, the night sky became measurable and navigatable, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now what was random became more understood. In the same way, we've moved from what was Newtonian physics to what is now quantum physics. Mm-hmm. So what they understood as matter and atoms, we've gone below that. And now we see that everything is not matter and atom, but it's something that you can't even see or observe. It's at the quantum level. So particles make up atoms, make up protons and neutrons and electrons. So those particles come through string theory, and string theory is vibrations. So vibrations create those particles, and the vibrations themselves are determined mathematically, as they understand it right now, based on dimensions. So the universe has multiple levels of dimensions. And so through those dimensions, particles, string theory develops particles. And through those particles, ultimately through vibration, develop atoms, right? And then the humans come. And then the humans come, and not only the humans, but the whole solar system comes. And then you have black holes. So it is like this constant growth, macro, and then implosion into micro, right? So you've got
big
this
time
going
micro
on.
sounds like,
You hold a Christian philosophy or belief.
Yes.
How does quantum physics correlate with that?
Well, the thing is, I again, like, I think I would have to know the others. I have to know more about quantum physics and see what the relationship is, and even try to find my own way to tie it in together. And I think at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of things that always question and challenge people's belief systems, right? And it's interesting because even with all kinds of science and a matter of faith, I always look at it as like to say that a God created it doesn't take away from science being valid. Just because it's more of like this was created in this way doesn't mean that all of a sudden, science just happens to go out the window. Because there's ways you can even make sense of all like this stuff. Like if you look at this will go into the faith aspect of the pivot, but it's a good movie. I can't remember what the movie's called. It's a good documentary, and it looks at like the striations of sedimental layers in like the Grand Canyon. And if you look across these vast areas of like literally hundreds of thousands of miles across multiple states in America, you'll see like the same striation levels. And the only way that that's possible at such a long distance would be for a single flood to come across and to all of a sudden everything settled in. Because if not, you'd have this river running, would settle some stuff. This would run and would settle some stuff. You'd have a bunch of different striations. And all of a sudden you get to this point where all these different striations and levels become this, it's like, it would be different if there was different time frames. The only way for it to be would be for one level to settle in. And then people are like, well, when you carbon date that, it would have to be somewhat similar. And here's where the carbon dating thing comes in that was interesting to me. But here's what I've noticed. Like, if you look at a lot of different dating structures, like, you can do carbon dating, you can do radioactive dating. You can't always get the same number for age. And it's interesting, as someone said, if you think about the way the world was created, it's not saying it was created slow, it was created in an instant. And God time isn't the same as our time. So God could have made this in a day, but then from our dating processes that aren't perfect, we measure that and say, on our time, that would have been 17 million years, right? Whatever, 200 million years. And so when you start getting to this, like the science and the data, like, I don't think it really pulls me away 100%, right? It would make me question. I'd think about it. Let's be honest. I would think about it, like, how do you do that? But the reality is, just because our science sees things the way that we see them now, whether it's even, quantum physics, it doesn't completely take away from the fact that it was probably or could have been created by a single creator.
Oh, right. I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying, that there can be both can be equally valid. I was just trying to understand. You see, when we talk about, this is going to get religious, and I don't really care. So they talk about God, right? or people talk about God, it's like, how do you know who God is? Like,
Yeah.
can you, as a human being, define God?
I don't think you're supposed to. If we I think we think about what God is and who God's supposed to be, we're not supposed to make sense of it. It's not, our small brains are not supposed to be able to make sense of it. And some people could say it's a tool used to control us and keep the small people down. That's why they have religion. And there's very valid points to that. But I've always looked at my sense of belief in a specific way. And this is how I look at it is I like to live my life in a way that feels right and does good for people. And we know right and wrong. God or no God, we know right or wrong. And the majority of faiths, the majority of religions are based in a sense of I want to make sure I'm doing things right.
But
And
let's
so,
hold it there for a second before you
yeah,
go forward on that. How do we know what
I
is
don't know if we
right and
know.
wrong?
Well, if you think about it, it's I think it would be based on experiences and other people's reactions. Like it's not right to slap someone across the face because it causes pain, right? It's probably not right to sleep with another man's wife. Like there's certain things I think we know aren't right. Now there's going to be some in between things like more cultural and social because that does adjust things. What is right over here in America is not right in Kenya or right in Chile or right in Australia, right? It's just differences. But I think at the root of core humanity, it's not right to kill somebody. It's not right to hurt somebody, right? There's certain things. And so I think if we get to that level, most religions have some base of like treat other people right, like treat other people with care and kindness, the way you'd like to be treated. And so if I look at that, whether or not I 100% know to my core, which my life has been a weird collection of experiences. I have a deep faith that like God exists, man. That's my own faith and belief. But here's what it does. It allows me to show up in a way different way and make other people happy around me. I have kids who are strong, who are smart. I have friends that get cared for. I have family that gets cared for and loved. And I like to attest that to the way that I like to live my faith. So right exists, doesn't exist, as long as I'm living in a way that I think brings joy to the rest of the world and allows me to experience my life positively. Like that's what I'm going to say is proof for me to be a God.
It's like, do you, I mean, so to have faith, and can you correlate positivity with faith is what I'm trying to say.
Not always.
Because because if you have faith, it's almost like an equation where you put an X because you don't understand something, so you call it faith. Uh,
Uh, I don't know if I get what you're going towards. I got faith this will happen. I don't understand, so I'm gonna put it in God's hands. Yeah, I get that people can do that, but I'm not saying that faith means I'm not understanding. I'm thinking faith gives me hope. Like the thing is, what it gives me hope to pursue something. I don't think having faith makes you. I know a lot of people who have faith who are unhappy, but at least it gives you hope in the unhappiness.
right, I understand that. But in terms of like living your path, truth, positivity, so if you aren't able to connect from A to B, then there is a level of weakness in your execution. So, for example,
Why so?
you talk about systems, right? That you're a systems guy. If you're in sports, you're the strategist. You're able to look at the field. You're able to give insights and point
Hmm.
out.
Yeah,
If you told one of your players, "Hey, you just got to have faith. Whatever I'm saying, just do that, and it
hmm.
will work." But you're not doing it as a system or a an insight. Surely that student is going to have a weaker understanding or application
Oh,
of
of
what you're
course.
trying to say.
That's like if I have my kids and I say, "Hey,
Isn't
do
that
this
the
thing."
same thing as what you're doing with life?
Oh, because if you think about it, I have to, in order to take, so here's the thing, it's the entity it comes from. So if I have my kids go to me and they go, I go, hey, go do this thing. They go, why? I say, because I say so, right? That's not, it's the same thing. It's not it's the right way to handle it. And I could tell them exactly why, right? But you got to think, are they trusting the
But instead of
source?
saying I because I say so, what you could also say, you just got to have faith.
Yes. So say same thing. Say the same
But
exact
would the
thing.
kids
Here,
accept that
so
point?
here's so here's my thing. It depends on the source, right? So if I have a person who I see that's on the side of the street and they are living in a tent and they got a shopping cart full of stuff and they don't have a home, I'm not going to listen to them tell me about what I should do with my money because they obviously haven't been smart with their money. But if I see a guy get out of a Bentley and walk into his nice house and I'm walking by and I could ask him, I'd take that person's advice for money. So you're asking something I get it, but it depends on the source, right? So if this person's been around me for a long time and I've shown to have a reason to trust, and why the majority of things I've said have led me in a great place, then I could viably have faith. But it depends on the source and who I've decided to put my faith in. That makes sense. So
It
yeah, I
makes
don't I
sense, but that it makes sense, but the point that the person has only faith
well
doesn't make
no
sense.
well yeah, but you have to have faith in something. You can't have faith by itself. I can't sit here and say I have faith. Well, faith in what? In air to fill my lungs. Like
So
I gotta have faith in a thing.
the reason I'm making this point is that uh, I have a disagreement with people that base their certainty on faith. Like,
Yeah.
if you're gonna have a
But I don't think they do though. If you think about it, like I said, if a faith is in somebody, my certainty isn't in anything more than the person or the human or the entity. Like I have faith in the fact that this rope's going to hold me up because I trust the rope, not that I trust that I'm going to fall up in the air, right? If a ladybug comes by and
no, but
says
the
I'm going to
example
hold you
is,
up, it's different.
but the example is the same. It's like you're telling your kids, do this, have faith in what I say. They're gonna
Yes,
take your opinion
because it's
because
me.
they have faith in you, not
Yes,
in what you're saying. But you're saying also equally that they wouldn't hold that as they wouldn't take that as the argument, but you're taking it from somebody
yeah,
else.
but if you think about it, not every moment is a matter of have faith in me. Most of the moments that lead up to the moment of like, hey, just have faith in this, have been met prior with a whole bunch of situations to have them have faith in that human. So like in football, I'm not if I have a coach that comes out and says, hey, I want you to do this and do this and do this and do all these things it says to do, and he'll explain you like why. If you're here, you can be at this angle to make this tackle, or if you go here, you can get that person, shake their hand, get the interview. I've learned a bunch. So the only time I'd need to have faith is if something came and I was like, and I don't know, it doesn't make sense. Well, if I have a track record of things making sense, that's when I would execute on faith and say, all right, let me do it. But here's what's usually cool is if you have a person that did that and they say, hey, trust me, have faith, and you go do it, usually you learn more along the journey. So while having faith in doing it, you learn. You're like, oh, now I see why I was supposed to do that.
Okay, so let's break it down. Let's break it back. So the point is, what's the contention of faith? Like, where is the area that one has to have faith?
I think it's a matter of wherever you individually need faith. There's certain things that, I mean, it's relative to every human, man. That's an
No,
interesting question because where I need to have faith, it seriously is a very broad, like, I don't have to have faith that if I take on a project, it's gonna come to fruition because I know me, I have faith in me, but somebody else might look at the exact same project and go, oh, I can't do it. So it
right, right.
really is a
But this is
relative
not
thing.
about project. I'm talking about like God and religion, right? That we're talking about them not being mutually exclusive. That you can have science and you can have religion. If you
Yes,
have science and you have religion, you
but
should be able to not need faith to be able to explain God, but you can
I
explain it
disagree.
through.
Because if you think about it, faith is, I think the problem is people put faith into, like you're doing now, an only biblical stance. Faith is not only biblical. Faith's a word that lands outside of biblical aspects. It can easily be someone's like, I have faith that if I eat this hamburger, I'm not going to be hungry. It's a belief and something I may not 100% know right now. So it's not that it's a biblical thing. So I can have faith in science. You can easily say, I have faith that taking Tylenol is going to remove my headache. And it's just if you use the word, so I'm trying to give you a perspective to use the word as a word, then you can apply the word to anything you want, science and religion if you choose to. But then if you say biblical faith, like the faith in the sense of that, now we have nuances because that means I'm believing in an entity and a God and a something that maybe my eyes don't see, but I have to believe internally. And then we go back to the same conversation of I have faith for what I've seen happen in my life. And even if I may be crazy and no God exists, I feel good about the way I've lived my life based on my internal thoughts of what faith should be to me.
Yeah, I'm just saying, for example, if you observe the universe, if you look at a scientific perspective and you see properties and values in the universe, you
Mm-hmm.
see designs and patterns,
Yeah.
that's non-random.
Yeah.
Statistically, mathematically, the
You could create
probability
that.
of non-random events happening are
Mm-hmm.
lower than random events happening,
I agree.
right?
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, then where is the reason for faith in believing in something bigger or greater than yourself? You have to concur that there is something that's holding the designs or patterns or the
Yeah.
properties or values in the universe in place.
I'd
And the
agree.
reason,
It's a grand design, which means
right,
that
right,
I would think that somebody designed the grand design.
right. But the reason for our conversation on this particular point
Hmm.
was the nature of God, or
Yeah.
identifying God. And you saying you having faith, but I'm saying, well, how can it not be that you can just reason it through, that there is something that's holding the
If
properties and values in place?
I guess two answers. One is my brain does. I don't know if our brains are designed to make sense of the bigger thing. We can't make sense of our wives sometimes. You know, like it's so where there's certain things we're not going to grasp, we can't process. Second part of it is, I believe you think about the bigger picture of faith as a process. Like you're talking about a clear cut design and something that is. It's like you can say I can put it into statistics. To be able to say something exists doesn't mean that only science made it. It means that somebody made it, and we, with our small brains, are using science to make sense of it. And I don't know if it should be used the same way to discount it.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. When you get into quantum physics, you are actually using science to be able to substantiate your points around faith. Because when you get,
Somewhat, yeah, I guess.
well, when you get into quantum physics, then it's moving into the non-matter
The God
space,
particle, yeah.
and you're talking about observation,
Hmm.
and then things materializing through based on observation.
Yeah.
Well, your philosophy is about thought, that
Hmm.
mindset. Do you get what I'm saying?
Well,
And so
it's
mindset is
to some
represented
extent,
by a
yeah.
certain frequency, a certain wavelength, a
Hmm.
certain pattern. Do you get what I'm saying?
I
And
believe
that,
it. I believe it. So the thing is, it's funny because I get where you're going, but the way I look at it is, we're trying to make like you said. If I see the Earth being flat and I look at the stars, I can't make sense of it until I say, "Oh, the Earth is round." And we're using our brains to figure something out that we may not ever be able to actually figure out. So it's we might be right now thinking the world's flat and we can't make sense, but I think we're trying to. And I think to try and make sense of something doesn't mean that a grand creator didn't create it and we're uncovering it. It simply means we're making better sense for our brains. Like that's the unique thing is like people always ask, do aliens exist and can they exist? And based on my faith, my belief, I don't think they do. I think we would have seen them by now, but I could be dead wrong. 100% could be wrong, right? But if you're talking about quantum physics exists, what kind of science do we not even see? The fact that dogs can hear different wavelengths or colors can be seen a different wavelength that we can't see doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means
right, but
we our tools can't see it. So quantum physics becomes a tool that we have that doesn't see everything.
right, but this is the interesting point, right? That when the world was perceived to be flat, then I mean, so Jesus was around at that point when they
Hmm.
believed that the earth was flat.
Hmm.
Muhammad was around at that point when they believed the earth was flat. So we're talking about, Moses, we're talking about Krishna, we're talking about all the major
Hmm.
religions. These religions were around at the time that people thought that the earth was flat.
Hmm.
Surely, if these people were connected to something bigger and greater than themselves, one of the important things that they may impart to the world is that it's not flat, it's round.
Just because I'm connected doesn't mean I know everything it knows. Like
Right.
I'm connected to
I
my
mean,
laptop, but I don't know what my laptop knows. That's a
brother,
false sense of connection, though.
there's a strong correlation.
I
There's a
don't
strong
know.
assumption that
I don't
if
know
you
because
are connected to something that you believe is the truth,
uh-huh,
then the truth should be able to. What I would argue is that it doesn't. The point I'm trying to make is this: the
uh-huh.
interesting point is that it didn't matter. That is not what is truth, it's what we perceive as truth that
That could be
matters
part of
more.
it. That
Do
the
you get what I'm
100%
saying?
be part of it. 100% be part of it. But I don't know if there should be an assumption like my kids are connected to me, but they don't know everything I know. Like that's a clear, like you're trying to say because
No, but your
somebody
kids are
is of
connected to
faith.
you and you can communicate. The kids
Yeah.
communicate with you,
And half the
but
time
they
my
don't,
kids don't listen. You know, like
they,
there's things that my kids will never know until they experience it. They may never experience it. Like I grew up in a world my kids will never grow up in, therefore it's a complete set of knowledge they'll never have, no matter how connected to me they are. So just because I followed a faith at that time frame and we didn't address that thing doesn't mean that I didn't, have this perspective or this didn't fit in this realm. It's like if I believe the entity, I think religion for me is more about how do I live my life in a good way. what I would believe that that entity would say is a good way to where I can, and people, humanity operate smooth, right? So I think for me, it's like I'm not looking at, do I know all the secrets of the universe? I don't think that that's my perspective and goal. My universe is my family, the people I interact with every day, and am I doing that right? Is my question.
Yeah, I think my point here is that we're talking about the observer effect with quantum
Hmm.
physics. That when we talk about mindset, which is
Hmm.
what your game is all
Yeah.
about, I would
Hmm.
assume, right?
Identity, it's deeper than mindset, but yeah, it's in the same vein.
So mindset is a manifestation of identity, right?
No, mindset is one of the drivers of identity. It's one of the things that can, in the background, make part of who you are, who you are. We got to go deeper into that because you could probably go down a crazy little rabbit hole with that. But just, I think at the end of the day, the question you'll probably have is like, what is identity? And what creates identity? And who makes identity? And, well, at the end of the day, it's what I choose to think is me and how I show up
Well,
in the world.
that's a good point, actually. We will go into that. But what I was just finish off my train of thought, which was
Yeah.
that thought is perception and
Yes.
mindset is what you develop in your through thought, right? So these people, even if they were the teachers of religions, they it was irrelevant whether the earth was flat or round, because it was about what the current knowledge was and what the perception of knowledge was. So we don't know
Hmm.
what we don't know, but the
Sure.
mind works with what it knows as opposed to
Hmm.
what it doesn't know. So
Hmm.
its perception is reality, irrespective of total truth, right?
Sure. Yeah, I see
So,
that.
so what we're doing in terms of like mindset building is we're building a thought that is in the quantum world a vibration that, as long as you believe that thought to be truth, you can get it to resonate and impact or allocate energy to allow you to take action or execute on what you believe.
100%. And the same way that that thought could be based in your belief that a religion or God exists.
Okay, so yeah, and I'm listening to all these points. People are getting active on the comments, which is good.
Hmm.
So I appreciate the comments. We're reading them and we're trying to keep the flow of the conversation going. So we're talking about identity.
Hmm. Hmm.
Let's go into that. I really want to understand that because that's core, right? And it's very core to your own teachings and philosophy, which is about identity.
Yeah.
What is the source of identity from your own reflections?
What does it mean? There's parts of it. One's called the DMN, default mode network. So scientifically, we'll call it in your brain. You have, these sections of your brain that create who you are. And in fact, it's interesting when they do studies and they actually take to account, like if I asked you, who are you? There's a part of your DMN, it's called default mode network, that actually shuts down. You start going to the conscious things of what you've done. And in fact, who you are becomes a extrapolation of things you've accomplished. So why people, it's like when I say, who are you? It's hard to think of it. Funny thing is, when I sit back and I just start daydreaming about things I like and how I feel about things, that lights up. Science shows it lights up in mice. So, like, you are who you are when you're not thinking about who you are. And that's more the autonomous, how do I think, act, react? How I just go through the motions of the flow. And so identity is, I believe, a conscious action you take that becomes unconscious actions. So think of it kind of like riding a bike. In the beginning, when I want to ride a bike, I get this information, my prefrontal cortex. I got to learn, I got to think, I got to process. I'm riding the bike and I want to fall off and I'm looking at stuff and I'm freaking out. Well, after a while, it goes back to my hippocampus, which is my just operational flow. And now it's like I'm riding a bike, I'm on a cell phone, chewing gum, throwing newspapers as a kid, right? So the process of identity is fairly similar. It's what do I consciously do that I'm thinking through and processing to where it becomes so normal to me that it becomes who I am. And this relates to how you love people. It relates to how hard you work at a project. It relates to how when you quit, what you believe is faith, all these things. It's just a matter of what I put effort into. And so identity is something that comes from your personal creation through creating things you do in life, going through the hardships.
What is your soul?
What's your soul? Man, that'd be an embodiment of who you are outside of the flesh. That's going to be the internal human that you really it's the separation of the physical and the spiritual aspect. It's funny too, is when I think soul, I think people always like people wonder, like, do I believe in ghosts? I 100% believe in ghosts. If a ghost exists, that's the way a Holy Spirit exists. And if a spirit exists, there's got to be a soul in place. So I believe in ghosts. I believe in God, and I believe the soul is that part of you that when the physical aspect dies, the union separates, and now I'm this individual entity, we'll call it, that is in maybe past your quantum realm, or in a realm that None of us have any tools to even comprehend exists.
Right. I mean, ghosts can. The question is whether you can interact with ghosts. That's
Oh,
the
I
key
don't
point.
know. I don't know if
That
that's possible.
otherwise
It's
it
possible. I don't know.
otherwise it doesn't really. If they exist and they don't
Well,
interact, it
through
doesn't
I
really
think
matter,
that
right?
depending upon, but yeah, I mean, now we're getting to a realm where there's legit no. We could go back and forth forever. There's no
Right.
definitive
Right.
base. Like I guess
So
I got
let
this
me.
white noise stuff, but like I interact by prayer through the Holy Ghost. You know what I mean? Like
Well,
there's
we can go
zero
into that as
connection.
well. But let me talk about the soul, because the soul is a spiritual identity, is it not, or is it?
Well, at the end of the day, it's your identity, but it's just a different way that it manifests itself. Would be my kind of argument. We'll call it because I am. If I died right now, my I don't think my soul would be different thoughts and brains. It'd be the same thoughts, brains, and memories. So it's all the same thing. It's just in a different embodiment of it. It's a different vessel to carry it.
I'm trying to understand where identity comes from. Um, if
Oh man, that'd be a great question. And someone would love to answer, but I don't know if there's any science that can actually definitively say this is what it is. There's a
Well,
lot that goes into these
let's go
questions.
into faith as a concept then when we
Okay,
cover this point, right?
that could be part of your identity.
So what I'm saying is it possible that your spiritual, so they talk about the human being, a spiritual being having a physical experience.
Hmm.
How do you understand that statement?
Literally, how you just said it.
Do you agree with it?
I do. I would agree with it.
Okay. So if you're a spiritual being having a physical experience,
Hmm.
then your soul identity would be your physical identity. It wouldn't be what you create, it's what you already are.
Well,
And you're going back to.
nah, I see what you're saying, and I don't think that's it because it's to think of the soul as not having done work, but if I'm having a physical experience, an experience creates something. As a process, I love to say it's a statement is what you create creates you, right? So if I'm a spiritual being of a physical experience and I'm creating things, I'm creating more experiences. I'm creating just by creating with my hands, I'm making more things and
But
going
the
through experiences.
but the
So it would
missing
anchor a
element
different
is
identity.
what you create. And
Yeah.
what's that force that is calling you to create a certain thing?
That's not the question. You didn't ask that question, and that's a
No,
whole
I mean
different
that is
monster.
part of the question, though, right? Because
I
you're
don't
going
know.
into
You didn't
B
ask
and
it.
C. I asked, what is identity? Do you get what I'm saying?
You're this is this is funny. This is why I like talking to you because I have to play mental gymnastics with you and bring you back to center. So I don't think that I think what you asked was one question, and then you're adding parts to the question, and I don't think the original question, what's identity? We went
Right.
down that pathway, and I
No,
believe
no,
then you said what's a soul, and then a soul is another thing too, right?
no,
And
no, no,
so
no. It was the same thing. But my point is this: that I was asking you about identity to understand
mhm,
where your current state of uh, your positioning was. I
mhm.
brought in the soul because I believe the soul is your identity. So I wanted you to
Yeah,
explain to me if you had
it's
any connection or you correlated soul with identity.
yeah.
But
I already
your
said
your
that. I agreed.
but your
I
philosophy,
did. I actually agree with that because I think at the end of the day, it's like if I'm saying I'm a soul and I have
you're
this,
gonna
and
have to
if I
watch this
die,
video again, brother.
well, here's the thing: what I said. If I was to die right now, I'd have the same thoughts and memories and everything. Therefore, that would still be my identity in a spiritual form. And you said, well, I think soul is going to be a spiritual being, have a physical experience. And then when I go back to my spiritual being, how are you the same when you had experiences as a physical being with that soul? And these experiences helped add on to the identity of whoever my soul was. I didn't leave having no experience and like, oh, I just went and did that physical thing and I'm done now. I
I,
had an
I
experience with that soul that anchored more of the identity.
I think I'm carrying on with the same conversation that we were having prior, which was about mindset. And I was trying to bring it down to identity. And I was
Okay.
trying to understand whether our identity is what we create or what we try and fulfill.
There's
My
both. It's
my
both.
my
Because
assumption,
to fill something would be what I create. If I have no drive to create, fulfill something, I wouldn't be creating. So it's the same path.
I'll just throw out my reasoning, and you
Hmm.
can like challenge me on it, or we can
Yeah.
just discuss it. But
Hmm.
my sense is that the soul is the identity, it's the spiritual identity. That
Agreed.
if we're spiritual beings having a physical experience,
Hmm.
then we're using physics as a way of identifying, uncovering, realizing what our spiritual frame is, because the spirit doesn't have a frame. It's not bounded, it's limitless. but it becomes limited in the physical world. So, for example, you could have the
But
identity of
why?
being a
Why
hear
would
me
it become? Yeah, yeah. You're
hear,
go.
hear me
I'm
through.
listening. Okay.
You could be a swimmer. Your identity prior to birth could be that you're a swimmer. If you never take the jump into the deep end, then you will never know if you were a swimmer. But if you take that jump and you start swimming, then you realize through the physical world what you spiritually thought is true. So your the physical world
So
through
you're in the belief
through
that your soul and identity is in intact in existence prior to you being born, and then you're having so I'm like you believe in multiple lives then, like
no, I
different.
don't believe in multiple lives. That's a separate thing. I'm just saying that you're talking about you have a feeling of right or wrong. That feeling
Okay.
of right or wrong has to come from somewhere. So
Yeah, life
wherever that
experience. That's going to
comes
be
from
nature.
is where your
Nature.
identity also is.
Yeah, and the thing is, your identity for the most part's programmed. Like psychologically, it's programmed before you're 15, 16 years old. So it all comes from experience. I don't think we're born as human beings. That's why nature nurtures a conversation. I don't think we're predetermined to have certain aspects. Like I'm not, my soul isn't a swimmer, I don't believe. Like my soul's my soul, right? And when I get into the world, I get to create things that bring my soul to life. Now, I think that that's when it starts. Now, when my physical body passes away, that identity is still intact in my soul, and that soul goes to heaven. This is my belief.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that I have no
And
proof of
that's what we're
this.
discussing. That's what we're discussing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what you're
But
saying, if
I don't think we use physics in that. That's a different
okay,
physics, is a
so
different conversation.
okay, so this is where we have the clarification. So my understanding of what you're saying is when you come on earth, your soul is neutral and
Yeah.
you create on
Hmm.
that.
Okay.
And then when you exit, you become what you ever you've created.
Yeah.
My point of view is different. What I
Yeah.
say is that we already have a spiritual identity
Yeah.
that is unbounded in the spiritual world if
Okay.
we are both a spiritual being and a physical being.
Yes.
So the journey into the physical
Hmm.
dimension is actually the hero's journey of Joseph Campbell, that you're going in and you're trying to discover through the calling, just
I
as
see
you
what you're
know,
saying now.
but hear me
Yeah,
through,
yeah.
you have
No,
to hear me
I
through.
know. I'm just saying. I hear what you're saying now. Go ahead. Yeah.
So just like you are getting the feeling of right or wrong, you also have this calling in you telling you you have to be or do something. When you want to be an NFL player, where's that coming from? When you don't become it, why are you being dissatisfied with your lack of achievement in something that you feel you want to be?
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
I'm saying is that you already have a spiritual identity.
Hmm.
The physical world is your playing field. It's the gauntlet for you to determine or get a clarification of that spiritual identity.
Yeah,
You
I
get
totally agree with what you're
bounded.
saying. Yeah, it makes sense. I think the thing is one, first taking into account, I believe we have free will. I believe we're given free will. So
So,
that's one. But
but
hold on. But you've had, all right,
is
go ahead,
that
because I got to unpack a lot now. Go ahead.
my final point is that the journey is one of rediscovery or
And
discovery
I
of
don't
your
believe that.
identity, whereas
I
you're
think it's
saying is
discovery.
your where you're saying is the creation of your identity. That's what I think the difference
Well,
is.
I think part of it. I believe we have a plan that's in place for. I think life is an amazing plan. I think God put some things in place that are great. We're also given free will. We also have a devil, right? So you have different dynamics that are always fighting against the same monster, and we're all trying to create something kind of crazy. So I get what you're saying. What you're trying to say is that we have the ability to be balanced as spirits. We come into this world, and there's already something preset for us. We're going towards it, and we have a fulfillment or lack of fulfillment based on whether or not we express that on the playing field of life as our soul. I don't personally believe that we are, because then, and to have that tells me there's a thought of I was already in existence and thinking this before I got into this. And I think if that's the case, then why can't I remember that? That's just my perspective. Like if I'm going to be the same entity when I leave, well, if I was to re-enter, I'd already have something, but I don't have that. So the way I look at it is like, all right, I have this God creates me, and I get put in this soul, and I get put in this body, and I come in, I show up in the world. And I believe there is a plan, but then there's so many dynamics that can take place out of God's plan and out of my control that are like, all right, here, this was going to take place. Now through this, I may have something where like, I feel like I would like to play football. I feel like I want to be a swimmer, but I think that's more of what's available, nature and nurture, right? I think that's what I run into because based on my upbringing, I statistically shouldn't be here. I should be literally in prison, or I should be a bad dad, or be homeless, or never graduate college. But the truth of the matter is I got to create and develop and build my identity out of something that wasn't statistically in place. So I look at the dynamics of the world we live in as, yes, I'm a physical body experiencing something as a soul that came into this world. And what I physically do with this physical experience creates my identity. Because in your line of thought, I would leave this body and have a vast amount of knowledge that I could never have as a set inside my real life. And I don't know if that makes logical sense. And then I go back to the beginning of our conversation and say, there's no way my brain can understand all this. Yours as well. Like, we don't have the full capacity of our brains to know all these things. So for me, it's like, if I can't understand why my kids do stuff, or my wife does stuff, or the neighbor or the dog, how can I even begin to believe I understand why God does stuff?
Why do we have psychologists? What's the
Because
purpose of
we're trying to find out how to take control and think of the thing. Think about it. Psychology in of itself is a thing trying to make sense of itself. Like the brain trying to make sense of how it works. You know what I mean? That literally is it's a study of itself, and in and of
right?
itself, it still has bias of a human. There are some psychologists who are sketch people, right? There's some interesting things. So I mean, this becomes a snake eating its tail conversation. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, that's part of the nature of it, right? And I appreciate everybody putting their comments in. I'm sorry I didn't catch up with all the comments. There's loads of comments there. But we'll carry on talking. We've got about 2 or 3 minutes left, I think. So I'll hold it there. What do you want to talk about, brother?
Oh man, I'm just hanging out, man. We're just having. I have nothing specific that I want to roll through. It was so Joel Ficca and Philip upon one, and then one beautiful for life for you. I'm loving. They're having some cool conversations. Joel says, for a Christian like myself, everything has been predestined and planned for us before now. Now it's up to us to accomplish these things planned for us. And I have an agreement with that, because I think for me, that's why I said there's a plan in place, and I know I have free will, and I think that there's whether you want to call it God or the bigger creator, I believe we got a really cool plan put in place for us as humans to do some things. And I believe that could be what you call the identity we're working towards. But I think we have also free will, we have fear, we have Satan that goes and clouds the path up, or we mess the plan up because we're scared of something, or somebody comes into place that gets there. And so I think that if we follow along with the flow, that doesn't always feel good, but it's hard. And even if it doesn't make sense, have faith. I've found that, dude, I'm an example of a life lived in weird ways that can't on paper make sense. I'll give you some statistics, and if you can make sense of these, we'll go ahead and say, like, you got it all. Here's the way I look at it. I was born into a system in foster care. Any prison in America, 75% of the inmates are former foster kids. 51% of the homeless population are former foster kids. Less than 1% of foster kids graduate college, and I've done that. Businesses, I've sold a business after 10 years. Less than 1% of businesses last 10 years. And my very first one did, and I sold it. And I got to the NFL. One of like 20,000 high school players will ever make it to that level and play. And every one of those compounds, because also 73% of football players post NFL go bankrupt, right? So how did these nuances take place? There is no grand design, except for only that I can attest it to is I've had a deep sense of faith. I go into things, and if they feel hard, I usually lean into them. There's certain aspects of how I just try to just not mess the plan up because of fear or weird anxiety or not accepting parts of me that got to be better. And I think that is the thing that attests to how I've created this identity for me. And I'm still creating it. And I believe that when I do leave, I'll go into a new place in heaven, and this guy will be there, not just this guy and stuff from before. Because if that stuff was there before, how the hell did I run into the problems in the first place?
Okay, so we got 30 seconds. My only variance with you would be you're creating, I'm saying you're fulfilling. That's the only difference.
I can see that. I can see that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I will totally give it to you. I'm not one to discount anybody's beliefs. I think at the end of the day, I like you as a human. Like, you show up, you do good things. That's all I want for us, man. Whether you believe we're fulfilling or creating, as long as we're doing good, like, that's what matters.
Okay, brother. We've run out of time. Just appreciate everybody's comments and everybody watching. Thank you so much.
If you want another awesome video in our Black Excellence series, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.